Ultimate. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 6 review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, streaming on Disney Plus. This is Movie Changeup podcast. I'm Joe Fricke with my guest host for these reviews, Tristan Mayer. Tristan, how you doing? How you feeling about this episode that I believe was called One World, One People, something like that? Maybe One People, One World.
Yeah, I think it was When World of One People. I felt pretty good about it. There's some things that I felt a bit let down or maybe rushed more so. I think once again these last few episodes have shown that I think they needed a little bit more space. I think there were stories that they had a couple more episodes and they decided to cut it down to six. So I wonder where that extra time would have been spent. But overall, I was satisfied by it. There's some leaps in logic that were taken that I want to talk about, but overall, I was pretty satisfied by it, and I'm pretty sure they set up a season two, so I'm happy about that too.
Yeah, this is. I'm seeing a trend that I'm not a fan of. I think my least favorite episode of WandaVision was the finale, and I honestly think my least favorite episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the finale. I still enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed this finale more than WandaVision, but there were some problems I had, and I think it'd be normally we start with our positives and get to our negatives. And while I am overall positive on this show and the series as a whole, and if you're watching this as a spoiler review or listening or whatever, this will be a spoiler review, so we'll be talking about everything. But one of the main problems I had with this episode, and we can start with that, and I want your thoughts on it because it was the cliffhanger from last episode, is Sam's Captain America suit. I think my main problem with it was it felt like it looked like a very, very good cosplay. And that was kind of my thoughts on it. It looked like a very good cosplay, but this suit was supposedly made in Wakanda. And if I didn't know that from the previous episode, nothing about the suit felt like it was made in Wakanda. Like I expected he would put on like the backpack part of it or the wings part of it, and the rest of the suit would form around him. And I get they have a budget, but they still did quite a bit with like Vision and WandaVision and doing a lot of like that kind of thing. So I think they could have done it if they wanted to, but for some reason they just didn't. And I saw a video the other day that was really kind of cool. Is they talk about how pretty much all of the uh, MCU heroes that don't wear like metal armor, like Iron Man or anyone like that. And I think your sound cut out for some reason. I heard background noise, but I don't know. But anyways, all right, there we go. But yeah, my that they all have vests and undershirts, so it's kind of interesting seeing that. If you can kind of see, and I noticed that in his, and that's not really a knock. They do what they have to do because they want when he raises his arms for the whole suit not to come up. But I just thought that was an interesting thing. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this suit?
Interesting. We're gonna set out by disagreement. I think I really liked the new suit. I thought it was like a route of the comics type thing. I enjoy that Marvel's gotten to a point in the last two shows at least where they're just kind of embracing the absurdity of their comic book characters. I think for a while we had like the X-Men effect where all the costumes on these movies had to be like really sleek and really minimalistic, and they couldn't go for the campy and the ridiculous because everyone was too scared to not be taken seriously. So I'm a big fan of this costume looking as goofy as it does. I do agree that I wish it had more Wakandan energy
Yeah,
to it. I wish it had some kind of power ability that was akin to like Wakandan tech or something like that
yeah,
that made it gave it like a Wakandan flair. But I do really like that it feels stepped right out of the comics. I love the way that the wings kind of interact with the suit, and the way that he feels like this blend of he is Captain America, but he's not letting go of his Falcon kind of pass with the wings. And I really enjoyed the way they all work together. It felt very high tech and very much like a modern Captain America suit.
yeah. I will say I wouldn't have a problem with the look of the suit if it just felt like it was made from Wakanda. Like the suit as is, if I saw it form around his body, like the Black Panther suit at the end of Black Panther, and we saw it like take hits and then it like could give that energy back, like the Black Panther suit, I wouldn't be complaining about the suit. But it's just I think the double whammy of it not looking as cool as I thought it could be. I'm not as fully a fan of like the super bright colors. I've always liked the Captain America suit that was a more like duller tone. But then combined with that, with the fact that it really doesn't feel like it was made in Wakanda at all, was kind of my negative thoughts on the suit.
I'm excited to see how it translates between this and the films. I assume if we see him, we're gonna see him again at some point in the Avengers movies or in some kind of some crossover role at some point. I wonder how different it's going to look once it gets onto like a big screen budget, and if it looks a little bit less like a Party City good cosplay and more like something that would be cinematic, or maybe they'll give him another power with it or something like that.
Yeah, especially because I mean, even Captain America's suit changed between films, so it's definitely going to be different. I think when it goes to the films, just because that's how it's always been. Everyone's suit changes a little bit in between movies, so.
I'll bring up one of my negatives since you brought up your negative on the suit. We'll start out with the negative because I do think overall we're going to be positive on it. When we talk about the show towards the end, it'll be pretty positive. But my biggest negative here, excuse me, my biggest negative here is the John Walker redemption arc. I think it goes way too quickly. I think he goes from like executing a guy on the street to like being a hanging out with Bucky and palling around and like giving quips like within an episode of an arc. You know, and I wish that he would have had a little more runway left, like maybe similar to how they redeemed Bucky to Winter Soldier. They had him save Cap, but he wasn't like hanging out with Cap afterwards, fighting next side to him. You know, he was still on the run, still had some growing to do, and I think that Walker and also Carly to an extent, but I'll talk about her later. I think Walker's arc gets kind of confused in this episode, where they want him to have this redemption, where they say, "Oh, he's a good guy now. He's fighting alongside Bucky again," but also at the end, he's working with Hydra, and he's in the U.S. agent costume, and he's hitting up the bad guys. So I wonder, like, I don't know. I just feel a little confused of where they wanted us to feel about Walker by the end, and I think they could have done more with it. But I'm excited that he's coming back because I think they'll give him a chance to do more with it. But I want to hear your thoughts on Walker's turnaround and redemption in the episode here.
Yeah, my problem wasn't really with Walker himself. It was more everyone's reaction to him. Because at the end of the day, Walker was still, like, he at least wanted to be a hero. He saw himself as a hero. Maybe just the way he did things wasn't exactly heroic. Like, the one thing he did was he killed that member of the Flag Smashers, but that was right after he had taken the serum and he had watched his best friend die. And so he wasn't exactly in the right state of mind. I mean, we even saw Tony Stark when he found out that Bucky killed his parents. Like, he was basically full attack mode against Bucky, and so he was kind of had a similar moment to John Walker. So I kind of understood, like, when he decided to save that truck full of hostages. Like, I still felt that was in line with who Walker was, especially now that he didn't have the weight of being Captain America on his shoulders. Like, I think that was a big part of his problem too. But my problem with Walker was, like, everyone was, especially Bucky's reaction to him, where Bucky was kind of like quipping with him and stuff, and he was just like, oh, quoting Lincoln, like, oh, and then Walker was like, oh, that's a nice touch. I would have rather, instead of a quip of just like, oh, except not from you, if he was more just trying to shut him down and basically not having that buddy but negative reaction like he had with Sam early in the series. I would have felt like if there was more of just a, like, I still don't like you kind of relationship. Like, you may be a hero, you may be a good person, I don't know, but I still don't like you and I still don't trust you. As I would, because that was my problem more, is Bucky and other people around him's reaction to him, not necessarily with John Walker himself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably the problem. It's more so that I think his arc goes too quick. You know, I think he could have saved that bus hostages his like first step back to redemption. But I think to go from that to equipping with Bucky to hanging out with Falcon, like it feels like he went like through a whole series worth of redemption in like a scene.
Yeah.
And I would have, especially if we're going to get it season 2 and we're gonna at least get more of John Walker, I would have liked that arc to be stretched out a bit more.
Yeah. See what other, because that was the other negative I had to bring up, was more everyone's reaction around him. But my other big negative is I think the whole power broker reveal was pretty weak, because like we've obviously talked on this show that I've predicted that Sharon was the power broker since we first saw her, but that's also been everyone else's prediction as well. Like I saw some people that predicted it could be Isaiah, of basically he has felt wronged by the government and he doesn't like the government and he doesn't trust the government, so he is basically trying to take out all of the governments. And I thought that could be an interesting twist, an interesting kind of thing to do, and it'd kind of be a big fake out. And I thought that'd be interesting, but I feel like it's almost, they should have done a better job at hiding that Sharon was the power broker, or just had told us from the beginning. And so you kind of have that thing of maybe we know she's the power broker, but like Falcon and Bucky and Zemo don't know.
Yeah, I think the handling of that reveal was a little bit weak. I left the episode a bit more confused than I was like understanding of where
Yeah.
Sharon's allegiances kind of lie, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense in the spy thriller kind of thing. They wanted us to end this feeling kind of mixed about all of our characters, really, and the places that they're in, and how we're supposed to feel about Sharon Carter's role in all of this. But I do wish we got a better picture of who she's talking to on the phone and where her loyalties are at. I just don't really know why Marvel is playing so much close to the chest at this point, because what is there to, like, I don't know. I wish that we got a little bit more of a tease for what is to come, I guess, for her character here. See, otherwise, it feels a bit shoved in and kind of rushed and not really part of the actual plot of the show.
See, I think I know exactly where Sharon Carter's loyalty lie, and I think it's with Sharon Carter. Basically, she doesn't trust. She's been, disavowed by our government. She doesn't trust anyone except herself. So I think it's more all about, bettering her position and bettering, her situation. And I know we normally say, because what you brought up the post-credit scene of her on the phone talking with someone. Do you have a prediction of who it is? Because I have mine.
I'd like to hear yours, because I don't really have any direction to go in.
So I was talking with our mutual friend Zach, who's been on our main show before to compete, and his prediction was it was Ross. But my thought on it being Thunderbolt Ross is basically, as far as we know, I think he's still potentially the Secretary of Defense, or at least he at least was at some point, and so he still has high up connections. I really don't think he needs Sharon to infiltrate the government to get those secrets and information. I think he could just get it himself if he wanted to. And I feel like Sharon was also very much in control of that conversation, and she felt very boss-like in that situation. And I don't think, if it was Ross, I don't feel like the tone and how she was talking to whoever she was on the phone with fits. And so my prediction is it's a setup for Armor Wars, because I think Sharon and the Power Broker is going to be one of like the bigger bads throughout all of the Disney Plus series. So I think it's going to be Justin Hammer to set up for Armor Wars, because I feel like you can't really do Armor Wars at this point without bringing Justin Hammer back. So I think it'd be interesting if it was him.
And I feel like if you're going to have that be the setup, I would just shove out the money, have Justin Hammer show up for a shot.
Yeah. And then afterwards say Justin Hammer will return in Armor Wars.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to go through the episode, but they were not afraid to be very on the nose of what they were going to talk about and do and be. And by the end, so I would, who cares? Put it on the title screen.
Oh, and the one thing I thought was dumb as far as the reveal of Sharon Carter was, she walks in and it's like, okay, so she's the power broker. And then she says something else that definitely confirms she's the power broker. And then Baltrock walks in. And it's like, wait, you're the power broker? And it's like, okay, you've done like one or maybe two too many things to tell the audience that she's the power broker. And it's like, we get it. We're not that dumb.
And they keep calling her power broker throughout the scene in case you forgot.
Yeah.
I will say, though, in defense of that reveal, WandaVision taught me not to aim for the skies with my MCU theories. Like, if someone shows up on the show, just take it at face value that they are who they are. And if there's a mystery of, like, oh, who's evil, who's not, just do the Occam's razor. It's the Marvel's razor of storytelling. Whoever is the simplest character is probably who they're going to go with. They're not going to pull in Mephisto. They're not even going to pull in Thunderbolt Ross. It's probably going to be somebody that is on the show, that's been confirmed to be on the show, that we already know is on the show, that's been set up to be this character over and over and over again on the show. So I think this show cemented that for me, is Marvel's not necessarily aiming high with their reveals here, at least not yet. They're taking it slow, and I've come to kind of appreciate that in this show more so than WandaVision.
Yeah, for sure. Another thing, trying to think if I had any other big negatives. We talked about John Walker. We talked about the suit. We talked about the Sharon Carter reveal, which was bad. wasn't bad. It just wasn't great. Like, it was so obvious that when it happened, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I've covered most of my big negatives. I think I have a bunch of notes to go through the episode if you want to do that, and we can
Yeah,
cover some
we
of
can
the
do
stuff
that.
as
And
we
I have
go.
like minor gripes that could totally be fixed in future seasons or future appearances.
Yeah, because overall I'm pretty positive on it, so I think once we go through it, we'll have a lot of good stuff to say, and then we can
Yeah.
talk about the bit of negatives when we get to it. I have once again pages of notes for this episode.
Okay, good.
It felt
Good.
like it was going on forever, in a good way sometimes, in a bad way other times. We'll get to that towards the end, I think. Tease for one of my more negative takes. So we open up kind of where we ended last week. It's Manhattan. There's this GRC summit going on, and the Flag Smashers are having their big finale attack on these world leaders. We get into the arc there of Carly generally. As she's been going through the season, she's getting more dark and more kind of violent. And here her final moment is like, oh, I'm going to take these world leaders, and if we have to, we can just kill them. And
Yeah.
her followers are like, well, that's a little much, and I think we see Carly had this arc of, oh, is she going to become a little softer, or is she going to go too hard? What's her ending going to be? And by that scene, I think we cement that she's gone too far. Whether it
Yeah.
was the serum, whether it was her personally, she's decided to take violence into her own hands, and she defends herself later on, saying, "I don't want to kill people who don't matter, but who determines who matters and who determines who doesn't?" That's kind of the question of that arc here. So I want to get your thoughts here, just in the beginning of the setup of this with the GRC summit in Manhattan and Carly.
Yeah, I think basically in most fiction they kind of show like killing people is not necessarily bad. Like, obviously you had the opening of the series where Sam Wilson Falcon is like took out a helicopter full of people, but we saw that they were bad people. If you're just taking out like random citizens or like politicians who are maybe trying to do good, like as I think we saw with the GRC, maybe they weren't fully on the right path, but at the end of the day I think they were trying to do good. If you're just killing people to send a message, like, you're the bad person, like you're not doing the right thing.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the arc of Carly overall. I'll get to her end a bit later, but I think this finale is interesting with the way that it's escalated slowly from like, oh, they're blowing up like this one building with some people in it, and now they're attacking the government, and you get like that slow build from angry people to violent people, and I think that's interesting. I think it's timely too. I think in some ways they used this ending and sort of the final scenes to comment on very specific like current events and some of the capital stuff that happened at the beginning of the year this year, and I think they've used that in a way to kind of comment on people. We'll get more into it towards the end when they basically explain to us what the show's about. But yeah, that was a good setup for that, and I think we had a nice throwback here, I think, to our comedy episode where there was a war room scene, and I thought, no fighting, we can't fight here, this is the war room.
Yeah, I definitely had some, at least visually, had some Doctor Strangelove vibes. I wonder how much of that was, the purpose from the get-go, and how much of that was, because of COVID, and they kind of had to do social distancing while filming, and really the only way to do that is everyone's spaced out around a big-ass table, but...
Yeah, I thought it was funny when like all the alarms go off and then some lady just like shrugs. She's like, "Oh, I don't know, some alarms going off," and I'm like, "Oh, this feels very relevant.
Yeah,
Something's going terribly wrong," and everyone's just like, "Oh, I don't know, something's wrong."
Yeah.
But anyway, we get our reveal here finally. We were teased at the end of last episode, but here he is. Sam Wilson has arrived in his white and red and blue suits right out of the comics, wings and all, and he says, "I am Captain America."
Yeah.
We talked about the comic or the costume a lot, but how are you generally feeling about like his arrival, his premiere on the like his reveal of the costume?
I felt it was too like there was no build up to it. I would have loved to have a moment where like maybe Bucky and John Walker like fighting some people, and maybe they're struggling, and then Sam shows up to help, or maybe like some cops are fighting people, like just anything where there's a level of build up. But it's like, nope, from the beginning Sam Wilson Captain America shows up and he's here, and it's like why? Basically I was like, why was there any level of like cliffhanger or suspense just to open next episode with like zero build up whatsoever? Like the last episode should have almost opened with him arriving and then the episode ends.
Yeah, I think it would have been a better reveal. Like you said, there was a huge cliffhanger of what's the suit going to look like and what's it going to do, and then it pretty much was just the costume.
Yeah.
Like,
Hey,
and when you have that big of a build up, just delivering what the costume is, I think sometimes lets people down. But I thought it felt like a moment that if I was watching this as like a movie in a theater, that the crowd would be cheering. You know,
yeah.
like one of those pop moments.
Yeah, like I was almost expecting a build up, so because I watched it, I didn't fully get to rewatch it before we went live, but I watched it before I went to work, and I was still kind of like waking up a little bit, and it was just like, oh shit, it's here, he's Captain America, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. We might be jumping ahead a little bit, but I love the moment between what I assume is like a father and son or grandfather and grandson, where he was like, "Oh, it's Black Falcon," and like the grandson was like, "No, it's Captain America." I really like that. Might be my favorite like 3 seconds of the episode.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. I like that. It reminded me a bit of like the cheese you get out of like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It reminded me of that scene in the first Spider-Man. I think it is where he's some kind of line where he's like, "Oh, if you mess with him, he messed with New York," or something like that. He messed with New York, he messed with all of us. Some kind of like
with Joey
cheesy
Diaz
comic
on the
book
train.
line.
With Joey Diaz on the train.
That was in the first one. I think that was the second one. But yeah, those kind of movies are always fun for me when they have those kind of like you see it too in a scene I think around there where Bucky saves the GOC senators. We're skipping around a bit, but yeah, he saves them the bus and they had the guys come out and he says like, "Oh, thank you so much for saving us."
Yeah.
I like those little kind of hero moments, you know, where especially for Bucky, he hasn't gotten to be a hero really.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of his redemption was done like off screen, and a lot of his by the time he was a hero for the Avengers, he got snapped away. You know, so we finally got to see him have like a hero moment there.
And not to jump on what you were saying and piggyback off that. I know we talked about maybe like by the end of like the show or going down the future that it would be like Captain America and the White Wolf, but I think the angle they're going more is he's trying to like reclaim the name Winter Soldier and make it more of like a heroic thing than necessarily being like, I'm shredding this part of me. I think it's more about like accepting that part of him and changing it. So I think that's more
I like that.
With.
I like that too because you have sort of like a foil with Sam, and he's sort of changing his name, his identity, and like in a way he's also trying to reclaim Captain America like from John Walker. So I like that take. I want to mention too, Sharon has like a Mission Impossible style like mask.
Oh yeah, because I mean that's from Captain America Winter, like the movie Captain America Winter Soldier, because Black Widow has that when she's impersonating like a senator or something. She has the exact same mask.
I wonder if they brought that there on purpose to remind us that it exists, so that when they use it against Skrulls, it won't be too surprising. Like, I wonder if Sharon Carter Sharon Carter as a power broker, that she's gonna have that technology to like balance out the Skrull shapeshifting in the Secret War feature.
Oh yeah, that'd be interesting. Like, there's Skrulls that are people, and there's people that are Skrulls. That could be really cool.
Yeah, like maybe someone's undercover pretending to be a Skrull, but they're actually a person, and they're shapeshifting using technology. I don't know. Marvel, run with it.
Yeah.
Knowing Marvel, it'll let us never do anything with it.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of two things. It's either gonna be a major important plot point in a show or movie, or it's never gonna happen, or it's like nothing, and it's just like, hey, remember that scene from Captain America Winter Soldier?
Yep. So essentially now the plan is enacting. The GRC senators have been they have this like Tenet-esque scene. Well, it honestly felt like it was like shot on the set of Tenet. They were like, okay, Chris Nolan, you get out of here because we gotta bring in Falcon the Winter Soldier. Because there's a scene in Tenet 2 where they take over like this big hall full of people. It looks almost like the exact same thing. And they're taking the senators into like these NYPD trucks, and meanwhile the Flag Smashers have kind of like intercepted the trucks, and they're planning to take these senators from the NYPD trucks. And Bucky's on the phone with Carly now, and she has this back and forth. It's their last scene, kind of talking together, of Bucky saying, "Don't do this," and know what it's like to like kill for something you think you believe in, and not, and all that kind of stuff. Finds her to come back to the light, and she has this line of like, "You've never fought for something bigger than yourself."
Yeah.
To Bucky, who
that's the dumbest thing you could ever say. He's fought Nazis in World War II, and he fought Thanos like a month ago. Like, what are you talking about, woman?
Yes, I feel like Carly. Now is a good time as any to talk about Carly's arc. We'll get to her untimely ending a little bit later, but I think that her and John Walker are both the most interesting characters on this show, which ultimately I think is a little weird because by the end I think they get kind of confused, the writers, on what these characters mean, how far they're willing to go. Because Carly in one scene will say, "I don't want to hurt people," and then the other scene she'll say, "Oh, we'll kill the hostages, whatever. Who cares?" And
Yeah.
I want to know how much of that is Carly and how much of that is the super soldier serum. And I wish the motives are a little bit more clear on Carly. And uh, I did predict last week that she'd be the one to die, so I'll take the points for that, I guess.
Yeah, speaking
But
of that, I lost my bet, but I'm like, unless we get, Captain America and Winter Soldier, spoiler alert, for season 2, is basically that show, I still don't know if we're ever going to see Bucky again because it's like, character wise, what left is there, but. So I lost that
yep,
bet.
I if that's true though, I do kind of wish we got a bit more with Bucky in this finale because Bucky wasn't a huge presence in this final episode, at least for me. Like he had his closure moments at the end,
Yep.
but I wish he got a bit more of a change in the character. I wish we could have seen whether or not he changes to White Wolf or not. I just wish we could have seen some kind of staple showing a bit more of how much he's developed.
I mean, he sent his book to his therapist with all the names crossed off, and he's like, "I'm done." But to me, that's another moment of like, his character arc is fully complete now. He can die.
I hope not. I do like Bucky. I love the kind of Dick Grayson energy he brought to this show,
Yeah.
especially towards the end. He had like this
Yeah.
kind of punk rebel kind of
Yeah.
street kind of character that I liked a lot. I'd like to see
Yeah.
him come back
Yeah.
because, as we know in comic books, you can complete your arc over and over and over again, and then we'll just
Yeah.
reboot it eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have that scene where she kind of is talking to him on the phone, but at the same time distracting him so that they can infiltrate and take over the
Oh.
MIPD trucks. And we had this big kind of really awesome finale. Honestly, I thought Falcon taking on this helicopter is the next big action scene, and that kind of goes simultaneously with another one. But I think the Falcon scene is really cool, where we see his new Red Wing, but we also see him kind of working with this woman inside the helicopter,
Yeah.
where
Like.
he yeah, he has like this watchdog style like Google thing,
Yeah.
where he's like searching everyone on the plane trying to find someone who can fly the
Yeah.
helicopter, and then finds one woman and sends her messages and is able to use this kind of like spycraft technology. I really enjoyed this a lot. I thought it led to that kind of spy thriller
Yeah.
angle while also being like superhero comic book scale. What do you think of this
Yeah,
helicopter
so I really
scene?
like that because I think it also kind of ties into the opening of the first episode where he takes out a helicopter, and it's kind of like he's always been Captain America. It's just now he's realized it and he has the costume. But this is my main minor gripe that's more just me nitpicking, and that's something that could appear later, is when he was Falcon, he had like the spy drone Red Wing, and I know we saw him have at least 2 drones now as Captain America. And so, as Captain America, to me, he should have 3 drones. He should have Red Wing, White Wing, and Blue Wing.
Let's do it. Maybe in season two.
Yeah, I think that'd be awesome if he had, like, if they all could like do different things. Just 3 drones: Red Wing, White Wing, and Blue Wing.
Yeah, I like that. I'm glad the drone is back too. I think it's a pretty cool
Yeah,
addition to like the Captain America arsenal.
yeah,
And I'm glad you pointed out that it parallels to the opening scene too, because I think the opening scene he does it so violently, like he's
yeah,
just like so off the cuff, kind of trying to take this down, and barely does it at the last second. And he's so efficient in this
yeah,
final scene.
yeah,
He's so smooth, and he doesn't even kill anyone in that scene
yeah,
at all. He
yeah,
takes out the pilot, and then kind of they land the helicopter. He does it in a way that I think Captain America would. So I think we've seen him develop over the course of the
yeah,
show in
yeah.
a really interesting way. Uh, I wrote a bit more here about Carly's heel turn. We talked about that. I think towards the beginning of the show, I think in our first episode, we predicted, oh, Carly's probably going to turn good and fight alongside of
Uh,
Falcon and Bucky, or Bucky and Falcon are going to turn and fight
uh,
alongside Like there's going to be some kind of melding of the heroes in that
yeah,
side.
yeah. Who would
So I
have?
think it was,
I would not have predicted halfway through or I would not have predicted at the end of the last episode that this episode they're going to be working with John Walker against Carly. My money would have 100% been on they're going to work with Carly against John Walker.
Yeah, so I'll give him props for not going a super predictable route. Whether or not it was the one that whether or not it was done perfectly. I really liked the fact that they went different than what I thought they would do. Yeah. One scene I want to point out that was not quite as good here. It's not a big thing, but it's a tiny nitpick that made me laugh out loud when I watched it late last night, early this morning, however you want to measure time, And it was when, I can't remember the context, but they're on this bridge fighting, and Falcon kind of like lands and goes to turn around and jump off, and it's like these 10 seconds where he lands on the bridge and turns and stands up, and within the 10 seconds the people in the cars not only have gotten out of their cars, but they're all standing up, they're all clapping, they're all cheering, and they're all like CGI repeated like there's like 5 people that's repeated over the course of this whole entire crowd.
I didn't see that.
And they're all just like, yeah, doing like this repeated like PS2 MLB The Show crowd motion. It was pretty bad. I was like, wow, they teleported out of their cars pretty quick. Because Falcon lands in front of them and turns around, and all of a sudden they're all cheering for him. I was like, I appreciate the crowd cheering scenes, but that might have been a little bad.
Speaking of bad effects, I saw a clip someone pulled from last week's episode of Bucky running away from the camera, and it's very clearly like Sebastian Stan just like ran as fast as he could, and then they sped up the footage.
They do that a lot in the show, especially in the movies too. I know in Winter Soldier they do that a lot to really impact the action. They'd speed it up. But overall, I really thought the effects in both of these action scenes were pretty good.
Yeah.
Especially for a TV budget. I think this is one of the better. It helps that it's nighttime, which I think makes the effects look a bit better. Yeah. But I think this is one of the better action scenes of the show.
And my other minor complaint is to make the suit feel more Wakandan. I wish Bucky's like boosters on his like pack were purple instead of blue, just because I feel like it would give it more of that Wakanda feel. It's just like those very small nitpicky things to me that would make it feel more Wakandan. If you're like, to me, there's no point in even saying that suit was made in Wakanda. Like, it might as well have been like, oh yeah, fucking, I don't know, I found it, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, I wish there was more Wakanda to it, but I did write down right next to this scene. I wrote, Captain America, new best Avenger. Yeah. So I'm super into this version of Captain America. I hope he comes back for movies, especially, and I just want to see more from him.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, I love how am I blanking on his name? The actor for Anthony Mackie. I love Anthony Mackie as Captain America as Sam Wilson. But one of the things I like is just how they've integrated like his power set with the wings as being Captain America. If you have more aerial attacks with the shield, and I don't remember who he was fighting. It might have been Carly or like another one of the Flag Smashers. But like he had the shield and he was pushing against them, and then like his wings dug into the ground to like brace himself more. And there was another one where he was like fighting a person and his booster on his back like started up, and it like allowed him to like fly into the person with a shield. And I like that kind of when they were choreographing everything, they thought of his wings and different ways to include it, and I really liked all of that.
Yeah, and I like that too, because they're gonna have to give us some kind of explanation of why he's able to stand toe to toe against like really powerful beings, and he's just a human, doesn't even have the serum, Yeah. So I think that's a kind of way to be like, oh, this is why he can punch like Thanos in the face, or this is why he can like fly with like Ironheart or whatever he's going to be doing in the future.
Yeah.
We have the arrival of the Captain America that I liked as he was, but I'm not sure I want to see more of him as Captain America, because John Walker finally arrives on the scene. He's out here to take down Carly. He's doing his final fight against Carly with his kind of makeshift shield. That's essentially just a old Captain America shield, kind of ironed together a bit. Looks very bad, but I think intentionally.
Yeah.
And we have this scene where he's chasing down Carly, and we have this kind of, I don't know, 4-way battle between Carly and Captain America and Bucky, and now John Walker in the mix.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting fight. It was, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I'll say that.
Yeah, it's a pretty good fight, and I think it leads up to that kind of like Martha turning moment where
Yeah.
he saves the bus and then kind of turns to good. And we talked about that moment a lot. I'll take it for what it is in the story. Like, okay, he's turned a bit now, and now he's like a little bit more of a good guy, or at least like a complex
Yeah.
anti-hero guy.
Yeah. I would say he's more of an anti-hero, more of like a Punisher type than a hero.
Yeah, that's how I'm seeing it, and I think when we see him more in the future, he's gonna be among the villain group, you know. So
Yeah.
he'll be that kind of energy. But yeah, like we mentioned it before, he has these kind of like quippy dialogue with Bucky that doesn't necessarily work here, but we mentioned that a bit already. This is a cool kind of fog scene right here before the Sharon reveal where they're in this kind of like foggy warehouse running
Yeah.
around. I thought the editing was a bit disorienting, but I thought the set design and the production value was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked it. I mean, other than the reveal, but like the setting of it was cool.
Yeah, but then the Sharon reveal, they make sure we know it because they
Yeah,
explain it
yeah.
over and
They
over
tell you
again.
like 30 times in that scene, hey, this chick right here, she's the power broker. Hey,
I didn't
hey,
expect.
fun fact, did you know Sharon Carter is the power broker?
Wow, I didn't get that. You know, I wanted to let you know. I have it in the theories at the end that maybe Sharon Carter is actually a power broker, but I
Well,
wanted to get your
no, dude,
take.
no, this is what it is. This is my theory, and I don't, they kind of hinted at it, but not really. Sharon Carter, niece of Peggy Carter, the woman from
Agent
Captain
Carter?
America: The Winter Soldier,
Yes.
might potentially be the power broker. What are your thoughts?
Oh
Hey,
wow.
Sharon Carter might be the power broker. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know if I buy that or not. You know, you got to point to the evidence in the episode. But I look, it was a super on the nose and obvious thing. I tried to throw some crazy predictions out there over the weeks, but I think this was like the easy answer. It was
Yeah,
probably going to be Sharon, and I'm fine with that. Like I said, the Occam's razor of Marvel is what I got to go for.
yeah,
I think I didn't necessarily expect her to be as bad as she is. I was like, oh, she's gonna be kind of like a dark agent kind of person, but I didn't really think she'd be like, oh, she's fully like working for the bad guys and like with the bad guys. So I'm curious to see how much she plays into the future of the franchise. But we talked about that a bit. Uh, we have this bad guy showdown now. It's Carly, it's Sharon, it's I don't remember Belrog or whatever the guy's name
Beltrock
is.
the Leaper,
Yes,
George St. Pierre.
he and they repeat uh power broker over and over again a few times, and then Sharon gets shot, and
Wait,
then
what did they go over?
power broker, it's a character they set it up in this series, and then they
Yeah.
actually revealed this episode, if you notice, that it's Sharon Carter
Oh, I
from
completely
fucking the
missed
Winter
that.
Soldier, from Winter Soldier.
I completely missed that. Didn't catch that at all.
All right, yeah, we'll get to it. It's in the notes.
Okay.
But yeah, that's Sharon gets shot. I thought for a second they're gonna kill Sharon off after all of this. That would be hilarious. An exposition reveal of who she is, and then she just dies at the end of it. That's like
Yeah.
Walking Dead writing.
Yeah. There are theories around that, and I'm not about to make another Sharon Carter is the power broker joke, but there's two tracks on this of basically because she denied medical attention after she got shot. It's one is she's like potentially has like a warrant out for arrest and like people want her and so she doesn't want to go to the hospital and get arrested. There is also a theory that she's a Skrull and that's why she didn't want
Mm-hmm.
medical attention, and I thought that's
I was
interesting.
fully expecting her to be revealed as a scroll by the end of the episode. That was when they showed her towards the end of, or in the post credit scene. Actually, I was like, oh, she's gonna walk away and then like scroll
Yeah.
reveal
Yeah.
herself.
Yeah.
But they didn't go with that route. I did read some stuff about the post credit scene, but I'll save that for the end a little bit when we get
Okay.
towards like the future of the MCU. But we're getting towards the end of the episode. We've covered this Carly ultimately is has this one last scene with one last battle. I mean with Sam Wilson as Captain America,
Yeah.
and then she's shot by Sharon Carter and
Hey,
dies in the
did you
arms of Black Falcon.
Sharon Carter, you mean the power broker? You might not
The
have
power
caught that.
broker,
You
yeah.
might not have caught that. I just wanted to remind you.
As much as we know, I'm a little curious. I don't understand how much Sam and Bucky know and don't know about her. Like, how much did he hear of that conversation?
About
Like,
Carly
aren't
or
they
the
linked
power
with each
broker?
other? With the power broker.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
But I don't know. We'll see. That's a kind of like small notes where I'm like, I just don't really know who knows what
Yeah.
about some of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I really enjoy it's an iconic hero shot of like Harley dead in the arms of the hero. I feel like
Yeah,
you've seen
yeah,
shots like that so many times, but I
yeah,
really like it. I think it's a really kind of
yeah. You
cool.
have, yeah. Whether it's like
Yeah,
Robin in Batman's arms, or you have like it's happened in every Star. It's usually the first movie in every Star Wars trilogy. Like,
yeah, it has a really powerful because I think this show especially deals in like the archetypes of fantasy and the
yeah,
archetypes of like stories
yeah,
and how we use them and why and what they mean. And I really like the way that the MCU is creating like an iconography with their characters.
yeah.
What else do I got? We're getting towards the
Oh,
end
one of the
here.
things I wanted to bring up with the explosion, right, of the car. At first, it took me way too long to realize who that goddamn old man was that blew up the van. I'm like, who is this? Am I supposed
So
to
who was that?
recognize? Oh, you don't know?
No, I wrote that down. I wrote, who is this man?
That's Zemo's butler.
Oh, it's Zemo's butler.
Yeah, it was Zemo's butler.
Okay. I was like, oh, is this some character that I didn't know? Is this some like power broker
No,
guy?
so that was Zemo because like they showed him and then it immediately cut to Zemo like watching like the news footage of it in his cell. So that's when I realized. So it took me a minute of watching Zemo to realize, oh yeah, that was Zemo's butler. So yeah, Zemo got his like last act of revenge against the super soldiers by killing that crew. But one of the things I thought was interesting was like it was like a cop or like EMT or something, like a jail guard guy. I don't know, something like that. Right before he shut the door, to put them in the back of the truck, he said like "one world, one people." So I'm curious. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
based on like the timing and everything, I think he potentially blew up in the explosion too. But I mean, that definitely showed that their message is spreading. So do you think the Flag Smashers or something we'll see again? Is this going to be like a Hydra situation of like we're gonna see people throughout the series, maybe people we trust, and then we'll see them say like, "Oh, one world, one people," and it's gonna be kind of the new Hail Hydra.
I think that'd be interesting. I think especially as we're seeing Madam Hydra and a version of Hydra rising again, we could
Yeah,
honestly see these like two foiling sides, like these warring spy
yeah,
factions. You know,
yeah,
we have the Flag Smashers on the one far side, and then we have the Hydra on the other far side, and that could be interesting through line. I think if they keep them around on the Disney Plus
yeah,
stuff, once in a while throw out a one people, one world, and then oh shit, that's a flag smasher. They're trying to fight
yeah,
Captain America or something
yeah,
like that. Is an easy way to set up a villain.
yeah.
We'll get. I want to save some of that stuff towards the end, but the last thing I want to talk about is Falcon's TED Talk here, where he goes
Oh, yeah,
over the whole thematic background of everything
yeah.
that Falcon and the Winter Soldier is
I was,
about. I enjoyed
I
it
was,
for what it is,
I was
but
not a
yeah,
fan of the writing of that. Like, I get what they were going for, but like comparing the struggle of like being a black man being Captain America and comparing the struggle of being a politician trying to fix the world after the blip, it's like, yeah, they're both very difficult and they're both struggles, but they're like not the same kind of struggle at all. It's like saying, oh, if you like chocolate ice cream, you should like pineapple on your pizza because they're both flavors. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, they're, yes, they're both struggles, but they're not the same kind of struggle at all. So it's like, why are we comparing these two things? And I get what they were trying to do, but to me, it just failed.
yeah, I think this speech is a bit cheesy. I think there's some really good lines within it that stood out, but it definitely feels like a comic booky kind of speech to me. It feels like something you'd read at the end of an
Yeah,
actual comic book where the
yeah,
main character goes on this soliloquy about like what he learned and how he grew. And
yeah,
I, like I said, this is a show that I think is we talked about it a lot throughout this review series that I wasn't sure how far Disney would go with the politics, and I wasn't sure how like both sides they'd be and what they do to draw an actual line and actually have good and bad and tell us like what they do politically.
yeah,
And I enjoyed that they really went there, and I enjoyed this final attempt to kind of really cement the themes home. I think
yeah,
we talked about how people can look at Captain America and think of 100 different things when they see that shield, and I think that this here is interesting because they try and give us a theme of what they see as a shield, especially like Falcon's
yeah,
idea of what it is to be Captain America. It's about bringing people together. It's about kind of learning to understand even our villains. And I really like the idea here of like if Carly drew followers, that's because she was onto something. Like
yeah,
she hit something that people believed in, and I think
yeah,
that's something that's very relevant today. I wonder how much of this was reshot recently and how much of it was written because I think a lot
yeah,
of this might have been added to
Yeah.
due to recent events. But I do think that's a good
Yeah.
perspective to have of like whether or not you agree with what their motives are, the Flag Smashers. I think it's
Yeah.
relevant that she was able to touch on to something that people felt, and I think it's relevant to obviously what's going on today with certain movements and certain kind
Yeah.
of radicalized things. And I think people need to realize, like you, that they say here, sometimes the word like terrorist and sometimes words like thug and stuff like that are used to get around the question of why, because nobody wants to ask like, oh, why do people
Yeah.
feel like this? They just say, oh, it's a villain, so we got to take him down. I enjoyed this. I think it has some nice lines of just the whole sentiment of like we can do better. And I know it's complicated. I know it's hard to be a politician. It's hard to try and run that game, but like we've seen
Yeah.
it get to your front door,
Yeah.
literally in real life, and also in the Falcon and
Yeah.
the Winter Soldier. We've seen that reality taken like to its farthest extent, and I think it's time to act. And that's kind of what this whole speech is
Yeah.
about. So I enjoyed it, but very cheesy.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how much like actually affected because I know, for at least from what I read, this was originally supposed to be 8 episodes, and there was like a big pandemic storyline that got cut because of
Oh wow.
obvious things. So I don't know how much of like basically they thought because I know like because there was the whole thing with the vaccine at the beginning, right? That they didn't really touch on of like that's kind
That's
of the
interesting. Yeah,
big
I
thing they're
didn't even
trying to
think about
stop with
that.
the flag smashers, but then it's never really brought up. And I guess potentially if there was like a worldwide pandemic after the blip, and the flag smashers were trying to help, that potentially maybe it could make them too sympathetic. That the fact that like especially as vaccines are coming out now and like I know America's at like 25% vaccinated or something like that, and Canada's at like 2%, and other countries are like super low. So seeing a situation where they're trying to like Falcon and Bucky and John Walker are trying to stop them from giving vaccines to people, especially when you have situations where like CVS and Publix and stuff have to throw them away at the end of the day because they're getting expired. That it'd be make them almost too sympathetic and then make the heroes too villainous. So they just are like, yeah, we're just gonna scrap that situation.
Yeah, a lot of this stuff felt eerily relevant. Like you said, they had the vaccines at the beginning, but even towards the end, they had this sense of like, oh, we're dealing with some kind of impossible situation. What do you
Yeah,
expect of us? The way the snap, I think, is an easy stand-in thematically for the COVID situation and the
yeah,
general
yeah,
kind of world in
yeah,
2020. And
yeah,
people can say like, oh, it's this impossible, unexplainable thing, but somehow we still have to go forward, figure
yeah,
out how to
yeah.
better things, and
Every time the blip is brought up in another situation, I just want a blip anthology show. Like there were situations brought up today of like you had a house and you got blipped, and then somebody else moved into your house and now you're blipped back. If it's like, okay, are you forced to find a new place to live, or do we throw out the people who live there now? And it's like, fuck, what do you do in that situation?
yeah, I would like some. We've talked about that too. The world building on this show is kind of weird. I think they're, especially because it's out of order too. I think
Yeah,
it's been confusing of what exactly is the world like
yeah,
after the blip. How famous are the Avengers or this and that? I think a lot of those questions are stuff we're not supposed to really be asking too much. I think even when to wrap up on this speech, I think this shows up. This wraps up what we're supposed to be looking at. I think, and
yeah,
when you think like, oh, what's it setting up for the future? What's Mephisto going to be in, and what is it setting up about the world? I think like that's not stuff
yeah.
they're really interested in doing, and I think this is really what they're were trying to do and what they're trying to talk about, and all the other stuff is just kind of like a means of doing it.
No. Yeah, see, after the whole Mephisto thing and like the writer of the show being like they never heard of Mephisto until the fan theory started popping up. When it comes to the Disney Plus shows, I'm not going to come up with theories that are anything like outside of what's been presented in the show. I'm not worried about like, oh, is this guy fucking this random character from a comic book? It's like more like, okay, they presented that the power broker exists. So based on how they've presented it, like who is the power broker? Like how is this storyline gonna wrap up? Like I'm fine predicting that, but I'm never gonna be anyone that watches this in the future, listens to this in the future. I'm never gonna like on Loki. I'm never gonna be like, oh, is like Hercules or now that they've announced that Zeus is gonna be in Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm never gonna be like, oh, is like that guy Hercules unless the name Hercules is brought up. Like
Yeah, I'll be interested because I wonder how much they're gonna be building that up slowly. Like, these first 2 or 3 or 4 shows going to be very simple and very
Yeah.
standalone, and as we get to Secret Wars, it's going to eventually have to start connecting. Like they've set up a lot of stuff already. Like uh, Power Broker's going to have to come back. I'm sure John Walker will come back. The uh, Lady Hydra, whatever her name is, Madam
Val.
Hydra, she's going to come back. So eventually they're going to get bigger, but I
Yeah.
do like that they're taking it slow a little bit. It feels like the olden days of watching Marvel Phase 1 where you're like, oh, here's the Iron Man movie, and then, oh, there's a little bit of a tease at the end for what's next, and then, oh, here's the Thor movie, and then a little bit tease at the end of what's next, and
Yeah.
eventually we'll get to our Avengers, and I'm really excited to see what that is like.
Yeah.
But our last scene before we get to set up for all that kind of stuff, I want to talk about. It's not necessarily in order, but I want to talk about Isaiah going to the museum
Yep.
with Falcon. I think that's kind of the thematic end to the show. Everything else is just kind of like an epilogue type thing that sets up what's next. I thought this was really powerful. I wasn't sure. I thought they'd do something with Isaiah towards the end. I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I thought, is he going to give a speech and mention Isaiah's name? Is he going to have some kind of setup in the museum, sort of like what we got? I knew something with Isaiah was probably going to happen to tie that together, but the fact that we saw Isaiah so much, we saw his grandson so many times, I think that shows one, his grandson's coming back. I think.
Yeah, that
And
was going to be part of my prediction. Is basically we saw Elijah, his grandson. Every time we saw Isaiah, we saw Elijah. Basically in this show, like there was never a time he showed up to Isaiah's house and Elijah wasn't there. Elijah was always around, so he's definitely like they're gonna bring him back as Patriot at some point. Like, or at least they're heavily planning on it. Whether they, they might just for whatever reason go against it, but they're keeping that as an option for sure. But I kind of like I weirdly expected more. Like they panned over and showed the statue, and then I expected there to be like a full wing dedicated to like all of the soldiers that were black soldiers that were tested on in Tuskegee, and then it was just kind of that one statue. So I kind of got let down a little bit, but I think that was my own thing of expecting more of like a whole wing dedicated to all of the ones. But like we at least get that statue, and I mentioned before as my prediction last week of like kind of how this show would end, and I thought it would be like more Sam's coming out of being Captain America would be like a low-key press conference where he talked about the names and like brought up Isaiah and all the other heroes, and they kind of did that because I feel like Sam's I'm Captain America coming out party was more his speech to that senator that we just talked about, and then they did give him like that statue to Isaiah to kind of be like, hey, like I think you'll be fine with me being Captain America because we are gonna like honor the people that came before and show respect to that. So that, I mean, when Isaiah saw him give that speech on the news, he was like, I got that feeling of like, okay, Isaiah's changed his mind on the whole like a black man being Captain America. But then when he saw that statue and like his story, shoot, do I have my phone? I saw someone save that story. I don't remember if I screenshotted it or not because I wanted to read it on the show.
I'll give my thoughts really quick on the museum scene while you look up for it, because I really enjoyed this scene a lot. I think it sums up the themes of the show a lot more subtly and a lot more effectively than the whole speech did earlier. I think the speech is necessary because, like I said, this show is for a lot of people, and I think they had to cover a lot of ground, whether it was age groups, whether it was political views, whether it was all kinds of demographics are watching. This is Marvel, So I think that on the nose explanation of the themes is important, but I think this is much more interesting and much more kind of cinematic and thematic, and I liked it a lot. I think it shows that we can represent the past and understand the mistakes of the past, understand the people who had their lives taken away in the past for what we have now. I think it showed we can move forward. I really think this show was about that. It's about being able to acknowledge the past and acknowledge the flaws within the system while also trying to move forward and giving us something to aspire towards. And I think that final scene really felt like that. It felt like giving us someone to aspire towards, whether it was Isaiah aspiring towards his resilience and his persistence in the past, whether it's Falcon today, whether it's Captain America, it's even if it's Bucky, the Winter Soldier. I think having these heroes and these icons to look up to as people better than us who we can aspire towards is what I really like about superhero shows, what I really like about comic books, and I think Marvel captures that really well. I think this show captures it really well too. I think it's one of the better things that Marvel's done. We'll talk about our overall thoughts, but I'm really high on this show, and I'm curious to rewatch it again because I think some of the stuff I liked a lot about it, like Johnny Walker and Carly, slightly falls apart by the end. But I still
Yeah,
had a really good time watching it, so I'm curious to revisit it in the future. But
yeah,
yeah, that's just sort of my thoughts on the one show. Well, I'll get to. I'm gonna save Bucky's scene with Yari. I'm gonna save uh some of that Zemo scenes for later. But that's generally my thoughts on the show and what it was, how much I liked it and what it was trying to go for. I just liked it a lot. Joe, what are
yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah, I really liked it. I thought it was, a slightly overall better than I expected. I expected just kind of like a fun action show. I didn't really expect any kind of political messages or political themes. I honestly thought the overall arc of the show would just be like Bucky and Sam becoming friends. Is kind of what I expected to fully come out of the show. Is them going from like, hey, I respect you, but we mess with each other, to being like, okay, they're fully friends. And that was obviously one aspect of the show, but that was like one of the smallest aspects of the show. There was so much more going on. Uh, but I definitely liked it. I'm definitely interested to see more from the story, and I just saw something while looking for Isaiah Bradley's plaque that I have here that we can definitely discuss moving forward once we're done talking about the show. I think that's going to be the first thing we talk about with the future of this story.
Oh boy, I'm excited for that. I haven't seen it yet, but
All right, do you want me
yeah,
to
that's
read
the wrap.
Isaiah's plaque?
Yeah, read Isaiah's plaque. Let's get that.
So, it said at top his name in large letters, and then it said, Isaiah Bradley is an American hero whose name went unknown for too long. Isaiah was one of a dozen African American soldiers who were recruited against their will and without their consent for participation in human testing in pursuit of the super soldier serum. Most did not survive. The few who lived through testing were sent on secret missions during the Korean War. During the conflict against all odds, Isaiah Bradley rescued his fellow soldiers and 28 other POWs from behind enemy lines. However, fearful of the ramifications of a black super soldier, some individuals within the government tried to erase Isaiah's story from history. His family was issued a falsified death certificate, and for decades the truth of his unflinching bravery was buried.
I like that. I think it sums up the story really well, and I
Yeah,
also like that it pays tribute to the other soldiers. I
yeah,
when I saw that shot, I see there's other plaques around, so I kind of thought like, oh, each of those plaques might be for each of the soldiers or
yeah,
something like that. I think that pays tribute pretty well,
yeah.
though. Any thoughts on that for you?
Yeah, I really liked it. I definitely think it does pay tribute to some of the past um, heroes more than I expected. I figured it was just purely kind of Isaiah Bradley, but it does kind of pay homage to the other soldiers that were affected. I love people my age, especially depending on what shows you watch. Grew up with Carl Lumley, so the more I see him and stuff, the happier I am. The Color of Friendship. He was the voice of Martian Manhunter on um, the Justice League show, and then obviously I loved seeing him in Doctor Sleep. So I'm liking this little resurgence of Carl Lumley's career.
Yeah, I think we'll see him a couple more times probably. I
When
When
I
we start bringing his grandson in, maybe we'll get a scene or two out of him in
Yeah,
Secret Wars or
yeah,
in Ironheart or wherever they're gonna bring these characters back in.
but yeah, he just needs a shot of that super soldier serum because there's no way he has powers right now.
Yep, he looks a little thin for
And
the
he airboat that
superhero
shot.
suit, I will say.
Do you want to? Is there much more about this show that you want to talk about? Because I think we kind of touched on
I
most
think
everything.
we've covered it all. Any
We
thoughts
can kind of.
quickly
I
on?
mean, it's more of the tertiary characters that we can kind of talk a little bit more when we talk at least predictions, because I think that's more where it's as far as
Yeah,
things like Zemo and some of these other characters.
the last thing I want is just a quick thought on how we end Bucky. I think we get through Bucky pretty quick right at the
Yeah,
end here,
yeah. I mean,
where he goes and confesses to Yari. They have that kind of emotional
yeah,
scene, and then right
yeah,
from there he goes and sees him at the bar and gets kind of like an affirmation that he's doing okay
yeah,
without him.
yeah,
And that's our closure on Bucky. And he sends a completed notebook
yeah.
to his therapist.
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see what he's gonna do. Is he just gonna be kind of more Sam's? I don't want to say sidekick, but like he's more just gonna be following Sam on missions. Because one of the things I wanted to talk about is I fully expected Joaquin to show up as the new Falcon at some point in that at the end of this series, and he didn't. So he's obviously got to show back up again. Um, so it's like, is it going to be like, okay, now that Sam's Captain America, he gets two sidekicks, basically just like Steve Rogers did with Bucky and Falcon, except now his Falcon is Joaquin instead of Sam. Or
I'm
is,
wondering if we
oh,
see Winter Soldier out in Wakanda,
Yeah,
and
that's
maybe he
another
becomes
option.
like the secondary character to Shuri's Black Panther, like
Yeah.
her sidekick out there. That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Maybe he's like the well, that would open up a can of worms. I almost said one. I wonder if he's the lead in like the Jordan not fucking Ryan Coogler. There we go, the Ryan Coogler Wakanda series. But I'm like, probably not the best to have a white lead as the star of your Wakanda series. Um,
I could see him as like the Martin Freeman role of Black
yeah,
Panther, though. He's like the outsider guy coming in, and he's
yeah,
like the dopey
yeah,
white dude. But Bucky, I think, is a lot more experienced in the
yeah,
culture, so that would be a
yeah,
different
yeah.
perspective.
Maybe at this point he's married to Sam's sister, and so he's like taking her to Wakanda.
Yep, for their honeymoon.
Yep.
But yeah, I liked Bucky's wrap up. I, like you said, I wish there was a bit more time in the show, and I think a bit more time with Bucky would have been nice. But I'm sure we'll get more with Bucky, so I'm not that worried about it. But yeah, I liked the end of it, and I liked. We'll talk about Zemo, and we'll talk about Lady Hydra, and we'll talk about U.S. Agent, and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the show overall. Good
Yep.
arcs, fun time. Doesn't necessarily hold up completely in the finale, but it's a superhero show. It goes where it goes, and it has. I had a good time watching it, and they went a lot further than I thought it would.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of how I'm feeling. I liked it more than I thought I would. Ending was not as strong as I would like it to be. It's probably my least favorite episode, but I still enjoyed it, and I think this says a lot for the show overall. That if I still really enjoyed the least favorite episode of the series, then my other
I'm
complaint
really
is I feel like they're definitely at one point playing for Rhodey to appear again because he said something in the first episode of like, "Hey, call me when you need me," and then maybe because of the pandemic or something, they couldn't get Don Cheadle back. But
yeah. I wonder if he played a role in that uh, pandemic storyline or
yeah,
something, and they had to
yeah,
cut him out. But
yeah,
yeah, not a lot of connective tissue, but still a good time. There is
yeah,
some connective tissue there. When I want to hear your cliffhanger, you set me up something big to talk about, so
yeah.
I want to hear that too.
All right, so the writer and showrunner of uh, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier has been hired to write Captain America 4.
Oh wow, Captain America 4. Did they give a release window at all?
No, the so Deadline and Hollywood Reporter are both writing this are reporting this, so it's a fairly. I mean, it's basically if you're
It's
watching
confirmed.
this and you don't know like what Hollywood Reporter and Deadline reporting something are, it usually means probably the head of Disney himself was the one that leaked it to Hollywood Reporter and Deadline. Like, is when they write something, it's not like some weird rumor that's probably not true. Like, it's basically fact at that point.
I
So
love that. I'm so excited. I really like the interconnectivity. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of would have preferred I'm gonna get another show, but I'm sure. I mean, I might
yeah,
at this point, if that goes well, maybe they'll give them another show, and maybe they'll
yeah,
be the new Russo brothers of this phase. Because I'm not sure the Russos are gonna want to come back. They kind of went out on such a high note with
yeah,
Endgame. Maybe these guys will be the ones, discovered through a Falcon or through
yeah,
a Captain America kind of thriller movie, and then they become the big people of MCU. So who knows? But I'm really excited about that.
yeah.
I'm sure Falcon will be in it. I'm sure Bucky will be in it. I wonder if U.S. Agent will be
Maybe
in it. I
that'll be
wonder
kind
who
of
will be
like
in it.
the origin of Patriot or something.
Yeah, because they have a lot to. I'm sure we have years and years between then and now, so a lot will happen with these characters in this world between then.
Yeah,
But I'm really curious how much that'll connect, because we'll talk about some connective characters too on here, but I'm still in that camp where I'm like, how much is Marvel going to connect these, and how much are they
yeah,
not? Because so
yeah.
far they've had some character crossover, but it's hard to tell what the ramifications are going to be when we're still in the early stages of this, especially during COVID.
Yeah. Well, apparently, what I saw is Julia Louis Dreyfus's character was or is in Black Widow, and so that's part of what was supposed to make it a big reveal. Is we were already have supposed to have seen her in Black Widow, and then when she shows up in this, it's supposed to be like, oh, this big thing. But obviously now Black Widow's gonna come out after, so it's more gonna be like, oh, she's the character from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I I like it retroactively that way. I think it's cool to see stuff set up in the show and then come in the movies
Yeah,
also.
yeah.
Because we've seen a lot of characters that were set up in the
Um,
movies that then came out in the show. So I think it'll
um,
be cool in a couple of months
yeah,
to watch Black Widow, and I'm sure people who don't know, they're not following the trades and the headlines and the releases, are going to see that and be like, oh look, they planned it the whole time.
yeah.
you know. but that's
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I definitely think now that Kevin Feige's in charge of everything, this is not gonna be like the Netflix shows where it's like doesn't really connect, or even Agents of Shield where it doesn't really connect. Like as we're seeing now, like Marvel at this point is a well-oiled machine. If they've hired this, they're not to talk shit about DC. They're not DC. If they're saying, "Hey, we hired this guy who already did a show for us to write Captain America 4," I bet all my money that Captain America 4 starring Anthony Mackie is going to happen. It's going to be released. Barring Anthony Mackie going and saying something really dumb on an interview, like Anthony Mackie is going to star as Captain America in a Captain America 4.
I love this, and I really do think like Marvel sells the tickets at this point. They could put any actor
Yeah.
in the role of anything, and it
Yeah.
would sell. Like people don't even care about Anthony Mackie in any
Yeah.
other movies
Yeah.
outside of this. Like Synchronic, huge bomb,
Yeah.
and no one's out here saying, "Oh, I can't wait for the next
Mm.
Anthony Mackie movie."
Yeah.
But Marvel can do anything, and people are going to see it at this
Yeah.
point, and I'm all for it. I mean, I'm in.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see it. I mean, gonna see it opening weekend when it comes out.
There was some more news this week about Disney Plus shows I want to cover too, because what this all seems to be leading towards is Secret Wars, the
Yeah,
Skrull invasion. It's going to be kind of an Avengers level crossover of Disney Plus. So we had some casting news added. Amelia Clark, obviously from Game of Thrones, and Olivia
Solo.
Coleman
Don't
from
forget about
Solo. Another Solo connection. Look at that. Two Solo characters in this now, in the MCU world.
Who's the other one?
Because we got Carly. We got our Solo Carly.
Yep.
Rest in peace. And we also got Olivia Coleman. I like her a lot. She's a
Yeah.
British actress. I know her from like Doctor Who and Broadchurch and things like that. But
The only thing I think I've seen her in is that weird ass movie with Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz. The Favorite.
that's right. She was in The Favorite too.
Where she won her
I think
Oscar.
she won the Oscar. She had a great Oscar award speech. Now she'll be on. How many Oscar award winners are there going to be on MCU now? It's going to be a lineup.
Yeah.
But I think Secret Wars, as we get more and more, I'm feeling like that's their Avengers moment. Like when that comes, that's when everything is building up to, really.
Oh, we forgot another MCU actor in Star Wars, or in Solo.
Who is it?
Lando Calrissian. Donald Glover is Miles' uncle.
Of course.
The
Look at
Prowler.
that. 3 people.
There's got to be more. I'm just blanking on who they are.
We're coming up on a dead zone though of Marvel stuff. A tiny dead zone.
We got
about
Loki. We have
months.
Loki in May or June.
I
June
think
11th?
Loki's June 11th, so we're gonna have a bit of a break. But I do think Loki will be a really fun one to review because I think they're gonna do some wacky stuff, and I think that's the one where they'll start to expand the universe a bit.
Yeah.
Similarly to in the first phase of Marvel, they had Iron Man. They had Incredible Hulk, little kind of grounded movies, and then we got stuff like Thor. They got a little bit more big, and I think this is a good jump for them. I think Loki will have a lot of style, a lot of kind of weirdness to the multiverse. So I'm excited for that one. I think it'll be way different than what we've gotten so far.
The one thing I have against Loki is I feel like it's not. I mean, maybe I could watch it and be it's completely wrong. I guess it could tie into the more of the alien aspect of Secret Wars. I just don't know how it's gonna tie into like this whole storyline they're building of like, okay, I can see how Hawkeye, a more grounded story, especially with Kate Bishop, can tie in. Obviously, I can see how Armor Wars could tie in, but it seems like all of these shows are kind of in this whole like kind of pocket grounded type thing, and then you have Loki like way out here. But then you also look at like where Guardians of the Galaxy was, where that was more setting up Thanos. So I could definitely see Loki more setting up the Skrulls and the alien aspect of Secret Wars than that, while some of the other shows are more setting up the main hero grounded people. So
because Loki will get us way out of the bounds Marvel stuff, and I think Marvel's teased cosmic stuff a bit with, like you said, Guardians of the Galaxy and then that kind of stuff. But we have Eternals coming up. We have a much larger scale cosmic side of the MCU coming up. So I think Loki could be maybe that middle ground of introducing us to that alien cosmic aspect without fully diving into it yet, because we have Loki as that like through line, Yeah. And I think right after Loki ends, maybe within a few weeks of it, is Black Widow, July 9th. So that should run right into it.
Yeah.
I also wanted to mention I heard from a couple articles and videos online, I'm not quite sure if this is confirmed or not, that Florence Pugh from Black Widow was in a post-credit scene of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She was had a scene with Zemo in the raft. I don't want to spoil a ton of it because I have a feeling they moved it to Black Widow as a post-credit scene there.
What was it?
But
Spoilers.
Florence Pugh,
Spoilers. Plug your ears. Whatever for the next 15 seconds. If you
yeah, I
don't
heard
want to
that
hear.
Florence Pugh shows up and essentially tries to recruit Zemo to like the bad guy squad.
Interesting. So my whole Florence Pugh theory is wrong.
But that doesn't. Yeah, I mean, because Florence Pugh, I thought would be Black Widow.
Yeah,
But
that's
if they're
kind of
going
what.
for like that, because Black Widow is supposed to be like that gray area kind of morally. You know, she works for the bad guys sometimes, for the good guys sometimes, and then
Yeah.
like once she becomes a hero, she's the Avenger. But I'm really curious where that'll leave Florence Pugh's character in Black Widow.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Maybe she becomes the new. Like my prediction is she becomes the new Black Widow. Maybe she becomes the new Taskmaster. You know, you got to master those tasks.
Yeah, you gotta have a Taskmaster going in. I've been playing Marvel's Avengers, and the first villain you fight in that is a Black Widow versus Taskmaster scene, and I was like, wow, look at that! What a setup! I'm
Yeah.
really excited though. The future of the MCU is exciting. I was not quite sure after Endgame what their next step was going to be, and now they're in a pretty interesting direction. I'm curious to see how this is all going to grow
Yeah.
and interconnect, especially in the next year, as all these things
Yeah.
that have been moved around, like Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Black Widow, stuff's coming out that was supposed to be out by now.
Yeah.
So how that's going to interplay with everything is going to be very interesting from like a meta perspective, and I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a nice run through the summer here of Marvel stuff, and then all the way for the rest of our lives, essentially.
Yeah.
2022, we've got so many movies coming out, and yes, the rest of the year we got stuff like Spider-Man. It's gonna be a
Yeah.
crowded couple of years here.
Yeah. Everything's crowded because everything got pushed back, and so now everything's gonna be crowded for a while, and then I still have my prediction that Fast and Furious 9 is gonna be the first movie to break $100 million opening weekend. That's what I'm
I'm
really.
curious. I just saw Mortal Kombat earlier, and I went through on the app looking for screenings, and like everything was sold out. I'm excited for
Oh.
it. Hopefully that means it's gonna be making a lot of money. It
But
could be the
is there
one.
like a lot of screenings like there used to be, or is it still kind of like, hey,
I mean,
there's a 5 o'clock, a 6:30, and like a 7:30, and those three are sold out?
I'll say like when you go to the normal digital screenings, like half of them are sold out, the other half are like 30% full, like normal
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
screening time. And then but if you go to like IMAX and Dolby and the high scale ones, all of them are sold out. People are
Okay.
really going to see like that in the biggest possible format.
All right.
I will say, tease to maybe a possible review. I watched it, and it feels like a B movie for HBO that got elevated to blockbuster status because we haven't seen a blockbuster in 2 years. But
Yeah.
check it out. It's a good time. It's just not necessarily the one that's going to revive your love for the theater and be like, okay,
Yeah.
I got to go see this IMAX. Good time.
So would you recommend it to someone that does not give a fuck about Mortal Kombat and has never played a single Mortal Kombat game to their recollection?
I'm not sure because I played a handful of them. I don't know anything about the lore or anything really, but
Yeah.
I've like know the characters enough to recognize them when they show up, and I know some of like their moves enough to know them when they do them. But so I had a good time with that, and my crowd definitely did too. People, it was like an MCU screening almost. People cheered for the pops, and when, they do the moves from the game, people would clap and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's a good fun time, but. I don't know how well that would play if you don't know what the fuck's going on. Because there were definitely people in the theater that were like, I don't understand this.
All right. So would you say the first 7 minutes? I don't know if you watched that. I mean, obviously you've seen the movie, so you've seen the first 7 minutes. But that first 7 minutes clip that got released, would you say that's like a good indicator of like?
That's a good indicator of the movie. The tone is a little bit more lighthearted at points because there's a good comic relief character, but I don't want to get too much into that in this review. But yeah, it's a good time. I think if you like kind of fun action combat movies, it's a good time to watch.
All right. Yeah. Okay. So what are your thoughts? To get back to the MCU, what are your big thoughts, kind of predictions overall for kind of like what's going to happen moving forward? Maybe any predictions for Hawkeye or any of the Armor Wars, kind of any of your predictions for that?
So I'm really looking forward to Hawkeye. I have the comic here. I meant to mention it. This is definitely what they're inspiring it on, and it's by miles the best Hawkeye comic.
Yeah.
The first one's called My Life as a Weapon. You can get it for like dirt cheap. I bought it used for like $6 or something like that. Or you can do Marvel Limited online. They have a streaming, like a scans platform. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Hawkeye a lot. I really like Haley Steinfeld. I think she'll be a great addition to the MCU. I think Jeremy Renner is great, but I do think he's getting to the point where he's going to hand off the reins a bit. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to Moon Knight too. I really love those directors and writers. That's not for a good amount of time, but I'm looking forward to that. And the more and more I go through this list, the more I'm realizing I'm much more looking forward to the Disney Plus shows than the movies. I'll watch Eternals, I'll watch Black Widow, but I think these shows are really interesting to me. I think the movies will be like world setters. Like when we see something happen in Eternals that shifts kind of the focus of the world, we'll then see it show up in Loki season 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think I'm really looking forward to how these are going to interconnect. So I'm just excited at this point. I cannot wait for Hawkeye. Loki will be fun, but Hawkeye is kind of where my hype is at right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think Hawkeye could potentially be partially what starts assembling the Young Avengers together. Just because I'm curious, maybe what Armor Wars, I definitely think will play more of the villains coming together. I do think, Armor Wars is also where Ironheart could come in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be the way to go with that. And I definitely think it's going to be a lot of the Young Avengers, is what I think a lot of this is going to be building up and a lot of coming together. Is the Young Avengers with Kate Bishop, aka Haley Steinfeld, who is my future wife. Haley Steinfeld and the Young Avengers coming together.
Yeah, I think the Skrulls are a good through line for all of this. Yeah. I was expecting them to be in this episode. In this episode really, but they weren't. But I think there'll be a nice connective tissue too between the movies and the shows. So I'm looking forward to seeing where the Skrulls show up. If they're going to be in Hawkeye, if they're going to be in Loki, if they're going to be in some of this stuff leading up to Secret Wars. Miss Marvel, I'm sure will have
Miss Marvel,
a lot of connective stuff because that's going to have some Captain Marvel to set up. I think Captain Marvel, even my prediction now, it's years away at this point, I think, it's this year, I think, but I do think Captain Marvel is going to show up on that show. I think that'll be the big cameo of the show.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a growing world. It feels fresh right now. It feels similarly to when you're watching the first phase of Marvel and you're like, oh, it's new. It's not really just repeating the same characters, doing the same things. It feels exciting, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. Like Endgame felt like a big reset almost on the world of like, okay, for like the last 5-6 years, we've kind of known where we were going and what we were building towards, but now it's wide open.
I can't wait to see it.
I really don't know what the big event movie is going to be for Marvel. What's the big team up, everyone coming together? I don't even know who they're going to fight. Is it going to be the Skrulls? Is it going to be I just don't know. Is it going to be Galactus? Is it going to be another kind of Civil War situation of the Avengers are fighting themselves? I just don't know.
It could be fun to get a Young Avengers versus Avengers kind of thing. But I do think it'll be a while until the Avengers have a big crossover. I was thinking that today. I think we have stuff like Secret Wars and Armor Wars coming up on this. I think the TV show will be a chance for Marvel to have these small event crossovers and every couple of years have one. And then I think the movies will be really a slow build again, which I think will be cool.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
But those are my thoughts on it. I really liked it a lot. I'm looking forward to what's next. Any final thoughts from you, Joe, as we get going for the?
I think I've kind of covered all my thoughts on this. I think that's all I got. Any final words before I sign off?
No, it was great. I'm not gonna make this We've already gone on for a while, just like Falcon did towards the end of the episode. I'm not gonna make this my TED Talk. Yeah. But I had a great time. Really great themes. I had a good time talking it with you, Joe. I can't wait to do it again for Loki and for other shows. I know we talked about it anyway, so we might as well talk about it on here and see if somebody watches along with us.
Yeah, we have one viewer. They haven't said anything. It might be you just logged into our Twitch. I don't know, but
I hope you like it.
Yeah, to our one viewer, hey, thanks for watching. Be a friend, tell a friend. I doubt we'll do an episode review for Bad Batch unless it's mind-blowing. We'll probably maybe just do a season wrap-up. But yeah, we'll do another episode review for Loki. And also, one final theory I wanted to bring up. Potentially, what are your thoughts? Sharon Carter might be the power broker.